What's going on, everyone? My name is Casey Francis O'Brien. I am a cowboy in the Wild East, and I just wanted to share with you guys, real quick, a recent update about all the different aliens and cryptid sightings I've been having living outside in a post apocalyptic Vermont. After things have been going to shit, we've been losing our freedoms, we've been losing our money. Richmond, north of Richmond, have been kind of raping the whole community, and everyone's kind of mad. The people that are still working 9 to 5s are pretty brainwashed. Going into public, it seems that everyone seems a little bit possessed. There seems to be some type of artificial intelligence, power games, and the spiritual revolution, whatever's going on. People are twitching. People have lost touch with reality. People are aggressive. And for me that lives outside and spends all day looking around, I see a lot of crazy shit that's going on outside of where everyone is trapped. So I have a video previously about all the different cryptid sightings I had for the past 10 years. I didn't go into there's a lot more that I didn't mention, but I'll save that for a live stream and just talk about the recent stuff that's happened just in this area of where I've been. I don't know, I kind of want to give you that view of the mountain, but I also like being on the left side. So maybe we'll flip it around. Okay, you ready? So the first thing, right here, right behind the camera where I used to sit before I had phone service and I would get Wi-Fi from this dollar store. I looked up at the sky, and for the past couple years, since COVID specifically, there was one time when I was 19, which was 6 years ago now. I got high with my friends on a mountain, and I looked up and I could see that there were tons and tons of UFOs. Like, there was a whole grid system going up that they were shooting around maintaining. They were going in like hashtags and like straight lines around right above us. And I looked, I was like, do you guys not see that? And none of my friends had any light coming out of their system. They seemed to be empty completely. I seemed to be the only one there, surrounded by all these people that were high. And I was the only one that could see it. I was the only one that had any internal emotions being expressed. Everyone else was just dead. And I looked up and saw that there were tons of grids going around up there. They're really maintaining a space. So since then, I just was like, then after that, I got a brain injury, and I went to college, and I went to Miami and Phoenix, and I met CIA agents, and I met my childhood heroes, and I did a bunch of this crazy stuff. And after COVID, I saw tons and tons of crazy stuff with like very spiritual experiences where things opened up my mind and showed me about the future, and the things that they showed me came true. But at some point, I just wound up alone, traveling by myself. And let's sit right here so you can see my face. And at some point, I just broke, and I was like, okay, I know I'm in a TV show. I know it's a Truman Show. I know it's a type of simulation. I know you're watching. If I'm on the right path, because I'm just going to assume you're benevolent, if I'm on the right path, please give me a shooting star when I'm on the right path, right to left, and then left to right if I'm not. And then it didn't happen right away. It took a lot of maintaining a certain state of mind to stay humble and forward moving and in control of myself with this new belief system I was incorporating. And then eventually I was able to hold it. A lot of trauma happened, a lot of beat downs, a lot of crazy shit happened. But eventually I got to a point where I was maintaining a certain state of mind. I think they call it the Tao Te Ching, when you connect to the Tao Te Ching. I was holding the Tao Te Ching, I was holding my connection. The Native Americans call it the sun dance. I was holding the connection with the sun, the light. Then eventually I was able to set the intention, can I please get a shooting star? And then I'd get one. And so far I've taught it to my subscribers. And we have one that's been watching for a long time and has helped me out a lot with donations in the past. She now gets shooting stars when she asks for them. For whatever reason, maybe my teachings has allowed her to open up a new realm of thinking that's allowed for this to happen. Maybe I've steered her into a pocket dimension where that's possible in the multiverse. For whatever reason, we get shooting stars a lot. But I didn't. Couple notable mentions, like one time I was living in Burlington and I was sleeping at Oak Ledge Park. Tons of crackheads, tons of pedophiles. the kids were partying, and we'd find tons of people in the bushes watching, and it was crazy. And one time at like 3 in the morning, I got on my stolen bike and I rode into town, and on the way, a giant shooting star right to left. So I was like, okay. And I remember everything else seemed dull. It seemed not real as I was riding into town on that bike path in Burlington, where Zachary King, the ex-high wizard of the Illuminati, said that he wound up in when he was trying to escape on his own. And when I escaped on my own, I wound up there too. And when I got there was tons of signs that said Casey co-created all over the place. And the other all the last names that contributed to the Casey co-created movement were the last names of all the girls that I had slept with prior to getting to that town. It's called Burlington, Shining Town. But for whatever reason, I got there. I followed the shooting star. I got reinvigorated. I followed it down to the end, and then I was famous. I made it downtown, and the local rapper, Real Ricky, was on a live stream, and he was arguing with a mentally ill woman from my hometown, the toughest town in America, Brattleboro, Vermont. There was a crackhead from Brattleboro, and I could pick her out. I knew she was from Brattleboro. They have an aura. They have an energy from Brattleboro. It's a special place like Sedona, Arizona. But where Sedona, Arizona's light, Brattleboro's different. So I could tell she was from Brattleboro. He was arguing with her. Real Ricky's means French king. He's French. He's from Burlington, where they pretend to be hood. That's like it's a fake city. So there was a big clash of energies, and I was in the middle, homeless, with a fucking Walmart throw, like a Game of Thrones cloak, and I had my hat with the crown on, and I was taller than both of them because I had Tim boots on, and I was holding a machete sheathed in my pocket because I had to pull it out to stop crackheads from attacking children. And I was standing there right in the middle, right at the Simon's gas station in the center of Burlington, and they were arguing on the left. And I just thought it was funny that he was using her for clicks because all of Burlington was watching, all the kids. So this guy was arguing with a kind of archetype of my hometown's energy, and this guy was an archetype of Burlington's energy, and they were going back and forth. So I stood there like this, and I was like, "You guys should kiss," because they kept going back and forth without it. She was like, I'm a man." He's like, "I can't tell if you're a man or a woman. What are you? You freak." And that's just normal in Brattleboro for people to dress like she was dressing and act like she was acting. But he was so confused. He'd never seen that. But they kept coming back because he was using her for content and she was using him for attention. It was probably an energy game because they're on drugs. So I was like, "You guys should kiss." And then I felt all of Vermont watching. And they looked at me, and I was standing there with a mile marker as a spear and the machete and the bat in my backpack, and I had the Game of Thrones cloak and the long hair and the crown on, right in the center of Burlington. And that I only went there because I saw the shooting star. A couple months later, I went to pick up one of my old foster brothers that I think he was 20 at the time, and he had been homeless and got into crack, and he was addicted. And so I kidnapped him from his life. I put him in my car, and I was like, "We're going to go to the lake." And then I drove him 40 miles up a mountain to my favorite spot to show him the view and be like, "Look at all this stuff that's out there that isn't just sitting in a pit with demons." Because he was going off about like soul switching and destiny swapping and trying to take my energy and saying the shit in my car was actually his and he was going to become me. And he ripped up all my favorite snacks in the back seat and just spewed it everywhere. It was like a demon was attacking me through him. So I took him to the top of Hogback Mountain, and I said, "If I should bring him to my favorite spot, can I get a shooting star?" And then a giant one slowly right to left above my face. So I brought him to the next spot. He was like half passed out, half in a trance. It was the year of the water cat, so the energy was like being underwater. It was very vivid, very bright, so I could see very easily with my empathy what was going on. A portal opened up in the back of his mind, and I saw a bunch of blue people looking at me in my imagination, a bunch of blue people with 3 eyes and some horns, and they were really amused. And then I had like the way that I was defending myself against feeling these energy attacks was by imagining myself as like a soldier, like an ego that was able to fight back, and I learned skills through that with like converting energies. And I had like a polar bear spirit for some reason, or a lion and an eagle. So they like came in and grabbed their hand through my mind, and I could feel them stimulating my brain, and they tried to break the neck of my polar bear spirit that was protecting me. So I had to like fight it off and try to imagine the polar bear didn't die and it fights back against them, like a battle of wills, and they were really amused. And then a moose showed up, and I'm not sure if it was a shapeshifter or a skinwalker, because I see a lot of those, and they have the same energy of like there's no empathic connection like there is with nature. Like when the skunk shows up, we feel like we're close together. When I see a bear, I can feel like the bear has energy and empathy. There's like this energetic electromagnetic back and forth. And when I see skinwalkers or aliens or something, they have no connection at all, but they look like they should be there, but there's nothing there, like an extra in a movie. But not even like an extra in a movie, like a robot. And it crawls weird. I had the same feeling, but it was something that was big that came out of the woods. And then whatever was speaking through this drug addicted crackhead kid that used to be very close to me went, "Is that me?" When he talks like this, but he went, "Is that me?" When I was like, "Bro, there's a moose." The blue things showed up in my dreams later on. Then I saw them in my dream. There was this giant river. There was a bunch of zombies on one end, and it was me and all of my Irish kids I grew up with on one side, and I had to pick them all up and carry them through a bunch of the prick English kids that would like. They were very prideful, and they were like blocking the way, and I had to pick up all my Irish kids that were scared, and I had to carry them through past the English kids. And there was a blue person next to me and was like, "I'm here because you allowed me to be here. You invited me in, so I'm going to hang out for this dream. You're not supposed to fight those zombies on the river. That's not your path. Look this way." And then I saw all the English whiny brats that I had to power through as a giant carrying all my friends. Then on my live stream doing ayahuasca live, I opened up again and I saw like 6 different types of aliens. There were bugs, there were cat people, there were actual cats, and then there were these blue things, the blue people. And the blue people are always amused, and the blue people always try to come in and just fuck up my shit because it's amusing for them. Or they're just in an elated state. It just seems like they're having a good time doing it. And the lion people were supportive. They were like, "Look, keep the connection open. Get a tattoo of a lion's paw on your hand, and we'll be able to work through and work with you." And then there was this old ancient bug. I thought it was darkness and evil, but now I think that it's just old bug people. This bug race, like the bugs from Ender's Game. And they came in and started like destroying my insides, and I could feel them converting me and like tearing up my DNA, and it felt like it was rape. And then the birds that were out here with me in the middle of the night, they woke up and started like pew, 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 pew. And I could feel them getting in with their sound and their wills and intentions, and were fighting the bugs back and helping me and healing me. So I hadn't seen a shooting star since then in a while. I laid down here very depressed because this town is horrible, especially if you're spiritual and creative. It's just everyone's trying to beat each other down. It's one of those rigid, wild eastern towns where they don't have any music or creativity. There's no sounds coming up. Everybody's walking around with their head up like this and angry and rigid and what they'd call traditional, but what we call sundown. Now I just kind of given up. So it was my last, like, is there anything up there? A gentle brush of a giant golden light, like a paw swipe or a paintbrush, right where I was looking. So I held one point of intention right there, just one little dot, and I was like, please show a shooting star. I was like curiosity trying to send my intention upward, and then a gentle, of the most loving, brightest light I've ever seen in my life. It was perfect. It wasn't like artificial. It wasn't like concocted by someone with a not as vivid imagination. It was like something more complex and loving from another dimension. Just kind of showed itself off very quickly by maybe it was converting the mass that I was seeing. Like it wasn't paw swiping through. It was changing the atoms, kind of bleeding through this dimension. And I felt like I could go into it, and then there was more things beyond that. Like I could see that there were beings on the other side within my astral projecting, whatever. Other notable mentions is a couple nights ago, other than the crows here really come at you all day. It's the same way. Maybe it's just that the crows have kind of grown up in the culture the same way, so they're a representation of what's happening here, with the fact that if you have any sense of brightness or creativity, they will swarm you and scream at you to either take it or stop it. this town specifically hates people that are creative. They have like a high frequency and this excitement for life. For some reason, everybody wants to destroy that and keep you down. I don't know why. I know that when I get into this, there's like 3 or 4 people I've identified as my gang stalkers. Like the worst of this town, like the real pieces of shit. And they show up every time I open my phone and start recording, every time I'm making a song, it's just members of this worst part of the community show up. And there was one just now. That's what I was looking at. He was just standing there with his head down like this, staring at me like that. So either they're possessed or gone, and now I can feel like this pressure and this battle because that part of the town is attacking me now. For whatever reason, there's a response system with the darkness there, and the crows seem to be a part of it. But last week, a bird started calling to me in the middle of the night, and then I looked at it in my mind the way that I used to last year, where I could kind of astral project and get a read of what was happening. And then the bird's face melted off in my head, and it was like this gross red demonic presence. And then I felt it get in and just start fucking me up bad. A couple nights ago, I was dreaming, and I had an amazing dream where I was going. Usually my dreams now are I'm going different places, and there are content creators on my phone, and I have to either bless them or leave them in the dust. And then if I bless them, then their channel blows up, like Cinna. Before Cinna popped off with Agent, I had a dream I was in a nice, expensive restaurant with all the rich people and the famous people, and Cinna was outside with her father. This was back when Cinna's clips with her father were blowing up, and I hadn't seen them yet. Maybe I saw one in passing, scrolling, but this was before she popped off. She was outside the restaurant, and I like opened the window of the restaurant, and I looked out, and she was like talking to herself, running in circles, and her dad was like watching, loving, like, oh, look at this. He was having a fun time too. They were just like exploring the outside of this area. They were in the club where I was in the middle of as the tree of life, the king of content. And I just opened the window and was like, has anyone given you water? Do you have anyone that actually cares about you? And she was like, no, but I'm here. So I like threw a water out. The next day she's famous, blew up, international fame. And then her dad was just like, wow, a real one. I haven't seen a real one in a long time. So I had one of those dreams again. But in this dream, I left and I went back to my tent because I didn't like who was there. So I tried to escape into my tent in my dream. And on the way, I was riding my bike away from all these crackheads and homeless people that I was talking to about what it's like to live here, because they were crackheads and homeless from the city that were trying to come to Vermont. And they were like, you're from the country. And I was like, let me tell you about what it's actually like out here. And then I left because I was mad that one of my old friends that had betrayed me in the past, and lots of stuff with like him learning pagan rituals. And I didn't know, but I had this like sneaking feeling that it was going to happen. And then it happened. And then it felt like he sucked the life out of me spiritually from 100 miles away. And now all of a sudden he's been dropping songs that are the exact style and the same essence and energy that I had spent years cultivating. And I've always had dreams about this guy who was my friend 10 years ago, Alex. I always had dreams that he was trying to rip out and take away my heart and my energy. So this year, in the year of the dragon and karma, for whatever reason it happened, I was mad. I was like, this guy thinks he's all this, and this, when I'm literally the pioneer for the New World energy. I'm the next Kanye West. That's what I was saying when I rode off on my bike like a cowboy in the Wild East. Then I laid down in my tent, and I felt like there was something there outside the tent. I saw this giant leg with head, like this giant pointed leg that was stomping with a bunch of like hair and scales on it. It was like this weird thing I've never really seen. It stomped on the tent. It put like its authority over, like, I control the space now. And then it leaned in, and it was like this giant hunking figure with small legs in the back and big legs in the front. And it had like a humanish face, and it came in and was like, liar, 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 liar. And then I was frozen in place, sleep paralysis, and I was like, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. And then I woke up, and the birds were screaming. In this world, the birds were screaming and surrounding me and trying to stop it. The crows were fighting the birds away, trying to boost this thing. And I could still see it in this world. It just was a hazy mist. where it was like not able to be perceived in this dimension, but it was there. I could feel the pressure as it was still pushing on the tent, and it was still whispering in this world. It was liar, and I was like, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. And then suddenly I snapped back and like connected back into the bandwidth of this realm where I wasn't allowed to see it, but I could still feel it was there. And then the crows showed up, and what I've noticed with the crows is that when they call, they create a space, and then once the space that they've created is here, then intrusive thoughts come in, then they start to program me, and I think that it's my thoughts and my personality, but it's not. So I'll sit here and I'm trying to create songs, and then I'm hearing thoughts that I think are my thoughts. It kind of sounds like my voice, but it's a mimic. Where it's something else, it's trying to make me say things, trying to use my manifestation energy to speak it into existence. Is that clicking? Where the crows create a space, then something else comes through the crows and hits me, and that's why they're always tearing away my dignity and my ego and my boundaries, because then I don't realize that it's not my thoughts, and I get lulled to sleep and deluded, and then I start talking and acting incongruent to my authentic behavior. Does that make sense? So I looked it up, and those things are called spirit walkers. You can look up a spirit walker. People have been seeing them for a long time. That's what it is. So I've seen Wendigo, I've seen Arcturians, I've seen Pleiadians, I've seen the insect things from Ender's Game, I've seen Avians, I've seen Lyrans, I've seen Spirit Walkers, I've seen Demons, I've seen Wendigo, I've seen what's probably Cernunnos, the Irish god of the wild, I've seen these cloaked figures with deer skulls, I've seen... See, the crows are crying when I mentioned that, because when I was deep out in the woods, one day I came back to my shack, Vivek's cabin, and there was a deer skull in the cabin on my path. A deer skull had found its way right there. I've seen these weird bugs that I think are what they call wood crawlers in Nexpo's Gemini Home Entertainment. You should look that up, the wood crawlers, which are these like beings that transmit from another planet that come in, and they're like an invasive species that gets into the nature and then gets into people and then starts to siphon their life away, and then it grows and becomes them. I had a lot of dreams when I was 19 about aliens that were like these tentacle monsters that were eating and growing. But the bees seem to be protecting me. Like, bees are flying in circles around me right now. When bad people come to talk to me, sometimes bees will fly in their face. Butterflies will land on people's heads when they try to give me a negative vibe and will block the way when I've learned how to connect to it. Other than that, like, there are strangers that come into my life all the time that seem like they've known me for a long time, and the way that they're talking, there's like this amused smile when they start to say things that I've been processing in my head. Like they were listening and they're relaying things back to me like I'm in a science experiment. And my soul is in a test chamber. And those things are the scientists. That happens to me a lot, and I think it's happened on camera many times. In the last 3 minutes, what's the other things that I see? Oh yeah, I see. So when you look up, you see things that look like stars. And this is Vermont specifically. If you go to Burlington, it's definitely there. There are things that look like stars, and then they'll blip out for a second, and then you'll see that it was something that was shining a light, and it's like this squid monster. Like in Rick and Morty, they had that episode where the squid aliens were really us, and we're all just clones of the same entity, like God expressing itself. You look up and you think it's a star, and then the star goes out, and you see like this hazy silhouette of the same way that the Skinwalker was hazy, or the Spirit Walker was hazy. You see a hazy thing in the sky, and that thing jumps like it's swimming, and it goes to another star, and it hides under the star, and then reflects the star. So there's like things above us that are jumping to different stars and just hovering in place. So they're probably siphoning life and programming the subconscious in the collective of the town. Other than that, like, the same color cars will follow me with the crows. The same characters of my story seem to be following me all day, where I'm running into the same characters, and it's always, I see them when I'm activating a certain energy, then they show up and they're like the opposite of that energy. So I'm like trying to speak truth and positive and growing and trying to motivate. And then you have like depressed people with their head down like this that are walking around kicking the ground and going, really trying to get in the way. Or I just had a homeless guy try to steal my stuff 2 minutes before this when I was writing a song. And they always get right in front of my face. blocking. Like if I'm projecting outward to create something in my mind, they try to get right where I was imagining my creation and try to, whoop, and then all of a sudden I feel empty and lifeless and depressed. So I don't know if they're NPCs. I don't know if they're gang stalkers. I don't know if they're skinwalkers. I don't know if they're people puppeted by the demiurge and the days are planned. I don't know. But I know that that's there. Other notable mentions, we have rainbows that are just like circles that are rainbows that will float above towns for certain days. So for a couple days, all of a sudden there will be a rainbow that's in a perfect circle just floating above the town for a whole day. And then a couple days later, it will be in another town. And then a couple days later, it will be another town. I have 1 minute left. The clouds that come in with the hurricanes, the storm clouds, there are regular clouds, and then there's these things that swim like the whales from Infinity War in the clouds, and there's lightning shooting around them. You can barely see them unless you pay attention, and you're like staring at the clouds, and you've looked enough to see the difference. But they'll come in from the lake, from Lake Champlain, from the water, and they swim like whales, and they shoot lightning down, and it's way harder than any lightning you've ever seen. And they're when they come down and I see them, they hit things so close to me as like a warning. And it's always when I'm elevating my consciousness to try to reach a higher reality, a higher paradigm. When I'm trying to escape the simulation, we get a storm and there's these whales that come in with lightning surrounding them that shoot it down really hard. And sometimes lightning comes up from the ground into those whales. I have more, but that's all I have time for.